All right, guys. So it's that time of the year, right? Right before the election, where the Democrats, trot out Michelle Obama and Barack to make that final push to try to stop President Trump from being reelected. Now, Michelle Obama had released a video where she gives her quote unquote closing arguments about why you should continue to till the Democrat plantation for the rest of your life. My biggest problem with Barack and Michelle is that Michelle grew up on the south side of Chicago. Michelle worked hard. Michelle did what she had to do to move up in law. She went to Ivy League school. She's a well-educated person. She's an example of the American dream working for a black woman. Barack Obama is also an example of that. But yet, for whatever reason, they're on this victimhood complex and in this victimhood train, when I know for a fact, based off some of the comments they've made in the past, especially during the social justice unrest under the Obama administration, that they know that most of the so-called social issues with black people are not caused by, one, President Trump, and two, by white people. I know that they know that. And it really bothers me how they let politics get in the way of actually providing real solutions for black people, because like LeBron James, like some of these other people out here that I criticize, they have the power to make the black community better. But instead, they would rather go on TV, play politics, till the Democrat plantation, instead of being truly concerned about the people that they say they're concerned with. Before we really get into this, my name is Greg Foreman, and you're watching A Black Conservative Perspective. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share A Black Conservative Perspective. You can also follow me on Twitter at GForemanBCP. Let's get it. All right, guys. So we're going to walk through Michelle Obama's closing argument, particularly the part where she talks about the protests and riots that's going on right now. And we're going to break down what she's actually saying. And I'm going to basically demolish her simpleton arguments here.
They're stoking fears about black and brown Americans, lying about how minorities will destroy the suburbs.
All right, first of all, this is a lie. What they're talking about is President Trump saying that Cory Booker is going to be in charge of like housing and urban development under the Biden administration, which is 100% a reasonable assumption. And the media is trying to frame it as if they're saying that Joe Biden is going to put Cory Booker, a black man, in charge of the suburbs. And this is just another example of the liberal media trying to use everything that President Trump says and try to extrapolate one little small thing that he says to some type of racist comment. And it's BS. I actually have a video on that, by the way, of Trump talking about the suburbs and Cory Booker. That's going to be in the description. A lot of this stuff I've already talked about. Second thing, she wants to talk about black and brown people. I don't understand where this terminology comes from, of black and brown people. This is white liberal talk. What they're trying to say is that the plight of all these other groups, the LGBTQ community, Hispanics, basically anybody that's not white, is the same plight of black people. And they're trying to pit all these other so-called minority groups against white people. And that's why they call themselves minorities. And I hate calling black people or any other group of people a minority, because it implies that you're less than white. People that love to use that term minority, I'm already thinking you don't think highly of yourself, because you're by definition calling yourself less than white. This is the type of language that they use to try to make you feel like a victim. And Michelle Obama is participating in this right now because it's politically expedient.
Whipping up violence and intimidation. And they're pinning it all on what's been an overwhelmingly peaceful movement for racial solidarity. It's true. Research backs it up. Only a tiny fraction of demonstrations have had any violence at all.
This is 100% bullshit. Okay? And I'm sorry about my language, but I have a video where I talk about the 7% of BLM protests and racial justice protests being peaceful. I'm going to play the clip with all the facts rolling. Right, but the good thing is we have facts. We have facts, guys. Let's see the facts. The cost associated with these protests is 552 protests, 14 million in Washington D.C., 500 million in Minneapolis, 23 million in Portland. So New York City, 115 million plus another 179 million from overtime. So that's about 300 million in cost for New York City. Now let's look at LA. In LA, you know, the 1992 riots, LA riots, were the most costly in history. These protests are estimated to cost more than that, which is 1.2 billion dollars. 1.2 billion. Okay, keep in mind, only 7%, guys. Only 7%. Only 7% were violent. That's not a big number, guys. It's not a big number. 542, not a big deal. Fiery, but mostly peaceful, according to the media. Cities like Chicago and New York City, soaring crime rates, soaring murder rate, more people being killed, countless lives, which are invaluable, lost. Over 200 stores and small businesses in Chicago have been impacted. Estimated cost millions, right? So all these small businesses have been destroyed. And to top it all off, at least 31 people have died as a direct result from these protests. That is more people have died from these protests than unarmed black men killed by the police per year. Think about that. Let that sink in. More people have died from these protests in 3 months than unarmed black men killed by the cops last year. And they say this stuff is helping. Mostly peaceful. Mostly peaceful. Right? And this is where the framing comes in. This is where the fix is in. Where they're trying to make you think that these protests are no big deal. They're not harming anybody. They're not costing any money. There's no economic impact. People's lives aren't being destroyed. Communities aren't being destroyed. Don't worry, guys. It's all peaceful. It's all peaceful. Now, wait. So according to your own logic, right? 540 something violent protests per year is not a big deal, right? It's not a big deal. That, according to your logic, right? So if I say that out of 375 million police interactions per year, only 230 black people are killed by the cops, I mean, is that not a big deal anymore? Right? Because again, I'm just using your logic, right? You're saying that only 7%. 7% is not a big deal. When 7% comes out to be 540 some protests that have caused millions, if not billions of dollars in damage.
All right, guys, you see that? You see that, right? And see what the liberals will say is, well, you know, that's not Black Lives Matter. That's right-wing protesters, and that's other people that's trying to hijack the movement. Well, my question is, why do you let another group of people hijack your movement for? Why are you letting another group of people hijack your movement? That's your fault. You should not be letting these other groups like Antifa hijack your movement, because essentially what they're fighting for, or they look like they're fighting for, is they're saying they're fighting for racial injustice and police brutality. That's another thing. One day is police brutality, another day is racial justice. What? Okay, just pick one. Pick what are you fighting for? Just pick what you're fighting for. That's another issue with these movements. They're not targeted. These protests have caused millions and millions and millions, if not billions of dollars in damage across the country. People have lost their lives directly. You know, people like David Dorn, who I don't believe that Barack Obama nor Michelle Obama said anything about whatsoever. These are the type of people that we need to be promoting in our communities. People like David Dorn. But instead, Michelle is more concerned with pushing a victimhood complex than she is about actually helping people in her own community, helping them do the same thing that she did to become successful. She's from the south side of Chicago, but she'd rather spread these lies and this false narrative that for some reason, that only 500 or 400 and some violent protests are not a big deal. And if you're going to try to make that argument, well, you shouldn't be upset when the right wing comes and says, well, you know, only 200 and something black men being killed by the cops per year. That's not a big deal compared to all the millions of people and millions of black men in this country and the 365 million interactions with the police every single year. And if you want to make that argument that the BLM protests are insignificant, then be my guest. But it's not going to end well for your, narrative that for some reason, black men being killed in this country is an epidemic among police officers. Because if we're using the same line of logic, then your whole reason for protesting is invalid, according to you.
So what the president is doing is once again patently false.
No, what you're saying is false. You're misconstruing facts, which is what the liberals love to do. They love to call themselves the party of facts. They try to act like they have all the facts. But once you really dig into their facts, you can see that they're just taking their so-called facts and they're just putting their own little liberal opinion on it and then presenting it to you as if it is some type of overarching, undisputable statement. It's just BS, man.
It's morally wrong. And yes, it is racist.
See, again, calling the president racist. My question to her is, when Barack Obama back in 2015 condemned the Baltimore protests, called them thugs and criminals, was that racist? Was that racist? Because if we're going to use that same line of logic, then I must call Barack Obama a racist. Because one, Trayvon Martin happened under him, Philando Castile happened under him, Freddie Gray happened under him, I think maybe even Sandra Bland happened under him. All these people happened under Barack Obama. And this violence and protest and unrest was happening under President Obama.
But yet nobody calls him a racist. Also, nobody calls him a sellout for using the same type of rhetoric and language that President Trump has used to describe these violence and protests. And it's funny to me because people will try to say there's no such thing as black privilege, there's only white privilege. What looks like black privilege to me is the ability to go out here and call protesters and rioters thugs and criminals and never be called a racist, while President Trump says the same exact thing and he's a racist all of a sudden. It doesn't make sense. Also, what doesn't make sense is the fact that President Obama is never called a sellout, even though he used that same rhetoric to describe those rioters. He said we need to bring the police in. That's what he said. Y'all can go back and look it up. He was pro law and order. He was like, we need law and order. That's what he said. The same type of stuff that President Trump was saying. Because he knew that the average American citizen don't want their businesses and their cities destroyed, and he didn't want that to happen under his administration. The same way President Trump doesn't want that to happen in his administration. And you can see how the tables have turned with the Democrats when it comes to these protests. Now President Trump's in office. Now all of a sudden, let them protest, let them riot in the streets. We don't need law and order. But it's Trump's fault. Trump's a racist for saying the same exact things President Obama said. But this is politics. Michelle is nothing but a politician at this point.
But that doesn't mean it won't work. Because this is a difficult time, a confusing time. And when people hear these lies and crazy conspiracies repeated over and over and over again.
See, I think that she's talking about COVID with this. And so my question is that the only conspiracy that I'm hearing is this conspiracy that somehow masks are the end all be all to solving this coronavirus problem. Because the CDC said that masks didn't work at first. That's the first thing they said about masks, that we shouldn't wear them. Then all of a sudden they changed their stance and then they require people to wear masks. And then the media spent the last 6-7 months getting on President Trump about not wearing a mask. So now President Trump gets COVID, and now all of a sudden to the left, he's apparently faking it. But also to some people in the media, when he was wearing a mask in a vehicle and everybody else was wearing a mask around him, as if the mask is, again, some type of magic pill for COVID, he still was criticized for it. They say he was being irresponsible even though he was wearing a mask. President Trump get back to the White House, he takes the mask off, irresponsible for taking the mask off. He can't win. He can't win. Just admit that you don't care about the science and that you just don't like President Trump. I would respect you more for that. Because at least you're not running around here peddling this rhetoric, an idea that you're somehow not a conspiracy theorist and that you're above the fray and that you don't try to put out your own misinformation. Because that's what you do. And this is what this is. The only conspiracy I'm seeing right now is revolving masks. That's the only conspiracy I'm seeing that's coming from the left. Because one day masks work until President Trump puts on a mask and all of a sudden the mask don't work anymore. It's amazing to me how much the left venerates the mask, even though it's really just a condom for your mouth at this point. That's all it is.
They don't know what to think. With everything going on in their lives, they don't have time to fact check falsehoods being spread throughout the internet.
Yes, you do. We sitting at home all day. And the only people spreading falsehoods are you guys. You're spreading a falsehood that President Trump is somehow responsible for all 200,000 of these coronavirus deaths. When in reality, if you take your numbers at face value, and guys, I like to use the commonly accepted numbers. And the reason why is not because I necessarily believe them, but it's because when you argue with the liberals, I don't need to try to sit here and argue with you about whether the numbers are real or not. I can accept the liberal argument that the numbers are real and still use that to disprove their point, because the numbers show that most deaths came from the Northeast in the Democrat states. New Jersey and New York have the highest deaths per capita from corona out of any other state in this country, and it's not even close. Matter of fact, all the Northeast states do. It's not even close. These are the real facts. I don't need to sit here and go back and forth with the liberals about whether the facts are real or not, because I can use the facts that they accept, that they tell everybody they should believe, and still show that your argument is BS. Because it is a falsehood that President Trump is responsible for all 200K of these deaths. How can he be responsible when most of the deaths in the Northeast states run by Democrats? So the biggest mistake that Trump made was letting Democrats handle their people and trusting them to get the job done. Because otherwise, as a conservative, I don't want an authoritarian president that's going to go and require mask mandates and try to administrate local audiences and try to force people to be on lockdown. I don't want a president to do that. I don't want the executive branch to do that. And nobody should want the executive branch doing that. But somehow this is what the liberals are begging for. They're begging for this authoritarianism and big government that's going to come to your small town and lock you up if you don't wear a mask. And that's essentially what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are telling people they're planning to do. But for whatever reason, people don't want to talk about that. They don't want to have that conversation.
And even reasonable people might get scared. And the one thing this president is really, really good at is using fear and confusion and spreading lies to win.
The only people spreading fear are Democrats. You guys are spreading fear that Donald Trump, some type of white supremacist, even though he's never been involved with white supremacists a day in his life. He's denounced white supremacy 1,000 times. Even back before he even ran for president, back in 2000, he was talking about how bad white supremacy is. Y'all try to make this man seem like a racist when you have no evidence for it. Fear. You guys are trying to make him seem like the problem for these protests and that he's causing these protests. Fear. You guys are trying to make him seem like he's responsible for this coronavirus and people need to be locked up and locked down and they need to wear masks everywhere they go. That's fear. The whole Democrat platform is based off fear. Most of the Democrats that vote for Biden and Kamala can't name one policy that Joe Biden wants to implement. They can't name anything that he wants to do. Only thing they know is orange man bad. So again, it's ironic to hear Michelle Obama try to talk about the president spreading fear when the whole Democrat platform is based off fear. It's really ridiculous. But anyways, I wanted to go through this and bust Michelle's ass because I really hate the fact that her and former President Barack Obama are two examples of black Americans who worked hard, who did what they had to do, who worked their way through the system, who didn't make excuses, and they were very, very, very successful in this country. They are the antithesis of the victimhood complex that they try to push, that the liberals try to push and the Democrat Party tries to push on black people. And even Barack himself has went out and said how much black people need fathers in the household. So I know that they know the answer to this is not what the liberals and the Democrat Party is pushing, but they just want to play politics. They care about playing politics more than they care about the people. Barack Obama said the same exact things that President Trump said under his presidency. And now all of a sudden they're trying to paint President Trump as some type of racist, fascist, uncontrolled person when we had protests on Obama. We had this social injustice movement on Obama. Black Lives Matter started on Obama. All these things happened on Obama, but somehow President Trump is the cause of all of it. It's just politics, man. But anyways, let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a black conservative perspective. Peace.